Hey chatters, in this video I'm going to be talking about some of the common AI pitfalls for small business. Whether you're just getting started or you're deep in it, I'm hoping this is going to help you navigate those issues that are inevitably going to come up when you're using AI or creating automations so you can head off some of the risks. After we go through some of the major pitfalls, I'm going to talk about how do you think through your use case to determine, is this something I should move forward with and do, or is the risk just too high and maybe it's not worth it at this point? So let's dive in. One of the most common pitfalls that I see companies falling into is this idea of the big red button. People don't really know enough about the limitations of AI because we're constantly marketed about the benefits and all the cool things it can do and all the amazing stuff it is. And so we get this fake understanding of what it can actually do and what it cannot do. And so what happens, and you've probably experienced this, is you expect it to be this big red button where you can just press a button and it will do everything for you. This is not at all the case, at least not in terms of where AI is at right now. You need systems in place, you need an understanding of where it's going to fail, and you need to think about where you're going to be in there as human in the loop to address any issues, catch any problems as this is going. So don't expect, if you're first starting out, that you're going to be able to press this button and suddenly AI is going to fix all your problems. There's still a lot of human creativity, thoughtfulness, planning, and intervention that is required by us humans. Next up, we have hallucinations, or some people call them confabulations. AI is just trying to predict the next word in a series, pretty much. Now, this has gotten better in some ways, worse in others, but generally, the AI is, just because it's trying to predict what's the most likely next word, is going to make mistakes, think that it's telling you the truth, when in fact, because it's trained, right, to be a helpful assistant, it wants to please you. In other words, it's going to be a sycophant, someone who's a yes man to you all the time. And so you really have to be aware of that, both in your prompting and your use cases, that this thing is going to make some stuff up from time to time. It's not going to be telling the truth, even when you give it all the information that it needs to tell the truth. These things are also trained about 6 months to a year before you ever get access to it, which means that its knowledge base that it's drawing from, unless it has web search or something like that, is going to be out of date. You might ask it about current events, and it might say something like, oh yes, this and this happened, when in fact, none of that stuff happened. So you have to be very aware of the situations when it's probably going to hallucinate. And think about it this way, pretend you have an assistant who just always wants to please you. Almost like we're communist Russia, right? Where we're all for the party, like we need to make sure Stalin is always right. So the idea here is that it is going to tell you what you want to hear, and so you have to be careful in your prompting, both to not lead it on to think that it should always be saying stuff when it doesn't know. You need to be making sure that it takes that critical point of view so that it's not just telling you what you want to hear, but also what you don't want to hear so you can balance that information. And then obviously, we'll talk a little bit later, what is the risk? If this is hallucinating, what is the risk to you or your company if it's wrong? And really measure that risk against the opportunity and gains you can have, but always trust but verify. Never expect that it's completely going to be telling the truth. It might be making stuff up sometimes. Next up, we have bias. One's very use case dependent, but the idea here is, since this has been trained on the internet and there's all this bias in the internet, it's going to mirror those biases. So for example, if you are trying to use AI maybe to go through resumes, right? And since it's been trained on all this information where typically people of color will have different names than people who are white, generally what you're going to start to see, right, is if you go through all these applications, if people have these off names, it might generally, right, favor the names that are more white related or normal Americanese. So you really, again, need to think about what is the scenario you're doing, and if it makes a biased decision, what is the risk to yourself, your company, and the people who are going to be impacted by those decisions that are being made. Next up is over-reliance. This is the problem where we're offloading some of that cognitive information, work, whatever it might be, to the AI. And that is fun, right? You want to especially be offloading those things that are boring, rote, take too much time and energy to do. It's good to offload that to AI. The problem is that once you start doing that, and especially once it starts showing you gains, you're going to start to over rely on the technology. This gets back to the big red button, the hallucinations, and our bias is that because it works on some of these typical tasks, you might then give it more and more to do. And those things are not really good for AI necessarily. You are also might atrophy your own skills, your own critical thinking, your own ability to direct what you're trying to do once you start using AI too much. So you always want to be thinking about it as human as director and manager, AI as assistant and intern, right? Offload those tasks and things that are boring, you don't really like to do, or it'll just do faster, right? If you have a really good idea for a strategy, you want to dump that into AI, right? And be like, make this sound good. But you're still doing that thinking. You're still the director in this relationship. So make sure you're maintaining that and thinking about the skills that you're offloading, not the skills that are going to be required later on for you to succeed. Edge cases are a huge concern when it comes to using AI. Again, these are probability machines. They're just predicting the next word in most cases, and they might be taking actions with tools that you provide them. The problem is that there are always edge cases being something that you weren't thinking about as a situation that could happen, and you haven't accounted for that in your system or your prompt. And so someone breaks the system or hacks the system or does something that makes you look not so great as a company. So there's a couple things here, again, you want to be thinking about. First is, and you can use AI to help you here, consider all the edge cases. How is this thing going to break down? What tests can you put into place to really stress this system and make it break so you can figure out when and how that's going to happen and account for it in either your systems, the prompt, whatever it might be? Last but not least is replacement. A lot of people are scared right now of their jobs being replaced, as they should be. Some of this technology is going to cause some upheaval in the job market. People whose job it was to do these very rote, mundane tasks are not necessarily going to be needed anymore. The problem is what I'm starting to see is an overcorrection. You're seeing companies, for example, firing all their software engineers because they think they can just code everything with AI right now. But unless you have that technical knowledge about what's best practices, that experience to know when something is being done wrong, incorrectly, or not in an optimal way, guess what? You're out of luck. You're going to replace people and you're going to suffer those consequences. So as a company, you don't want to think about this as a way to fire people, to get rid of people. But maybe, and especially for small businesses who have a tight budget, it's how do I leverage the resources, the people I have right now in a better way? Not how do I fire 10 people so that one person can do the work of those 10 people? It's how do I use these 10 people to do 100 times more work? This is a really important point, and it's also important because morale is going to die if you're trying to replace people. So the idea is, how do you empower the individuals that work for you or are part of your business to supercharge them, give them superpowers to do more of what they need to do faster, better, and will also open them up to be able to do different, more creative things, more strategic thinking, because they can offload that mundane work to an AI. So those are our common pitfalls. Again, we have the big red button. Don't expect this technology to just be a button you press and it's going to work perfectly every time. Hallucinations, AI makes stuff up all the time, so be aware of that. Trust but verify. Bias, this has been trained on humans and humans are biased, so be careful of the scenarios you're using where it could harm people of color, for example. Over-reliance, don't give up the reins. You are still in charge. You are still the director. So make sure that you are staying the one in control. Edge cases, these are situations you might not have thought about that break your system or AI or cause problems. So make sure you're devising ways to test those edge cases. And replacement. We're not looking to replace people, we're looking to supercharge people. Okay, next I'm going to talk about a framework that can help you think through your use cases and when not to do something. But before that, I want to tell you a little bit about the Synaptic Labs AI assessment. So let's head over there and discuss that. Is your business ready for the AI wave? Find out in just 3 to 5 minutes with Synaptic Labs' AI Readiness Assessment. Our quick questionnaire analyzes your current AI capabilities and delivers a personalized roadmap for integration success. Plus, complete the assessment and receive a coupon for any of our premium AI-enhanced workflows, absolutely free. Don't get left behind. Discover your AI readiness today at ai-readiness.synapticlabs.ai. We're back to talk about a way you can think about your use cases to address all these issues and pitfalls we already talked about in a somewhat structured way. So the first thing you want to do is come up with your use cases that are going to be most impactful. So you can use our GPT in our prompt library for this. I'll have a link in the description. First and foremost, right, you want to come up with how do you want to use AI in your business? After you've done that, go and create this Venn diagram and we can start plotting those scenarios where they fit in this Venn diagram. So let's talk through each. First is risks. Essentially, you got to ask yourself this question or ask the AI this question with your use cases. What are the risks of implementing this use case? Who is impacted? How are they impacted? If something goes terribly wrong, what's the worst case scenario? This is going to give you an idea of at what stage or level that risk is for this use case. Then you want to balance it with your opportunities. So every single use case is going to have some risk, but obviously it's a spectrum, it's a range. So you want to balance that against the opportunities. So what problems is this solving? How much time is this going to actually save us potentially? How much money is it going to save us? All those sorts of questions around what is the opportunity cost if we don't do this? And then our last consideration is the systems in place. And I don't just mean your tech stack, the technology that you're using and in what ways you're using them, but what are your human systems in place to deal with this? For example, if you have a use case that is just automating the posting of blogs, and so you're going to have an automation system in there where you give it a topic potentially, or it's searching the web or whatever, and it's writing a daily blog and then creating the social media post and then posting that blog, whatever it might be. So there's the technology system there, right? It's this automation that it's doing every single day. But what happens if suddenly it starts looking at websites it shouldn't be and posting blogs and posts that it shouldn't be, or it's not in your voice and there's no sort of human in the loop in that system? Maybe you don't have the capacity to have the human in the loop for that system because someone doesn't have time on your team to look at a blog a day and a LinkedIn post a day or whatever to approve it. Okay, so that means that there is a problem in your systems that you can't actually accommodate these specific risks balanced with the opportunities in the system that you have developed because you don't have a person to actually sit down and look through, okay, here's the blog, here's the post, I approve. It's also a matter of policies, though, and the systems of those policies. So another situation, let's say you have a customer service chatbot. That customer service chatbot makes a mistake. So someone reaches out to a human, but maybe they can't reach a human. Okay, now you've lost that customer. You've created a problem for them. They're not getting resolution. They're being forced to talk to this robot. And now you're going to lose some of that brand awareness and they might give you a bad rating. Again, you're in a situation where you're offloading too much to the AI because you don't have a system with a human in the loop. There needs to be, as part of that system, as part of that policy, that maybe we start off to filter with the AI, and then if it can't answer the question or does it incorrectly, how do we trigger a human to come into the picture? That way you get the ability to deal with most issues that are going to be common, but when an uncommon issue comes up, you have something in place to deal with that. So this is how you want to think about your use cases. You want to fill out what are our risks? What happens if this goes super wrong? The opportunities, what are the benefits we're going to see from this happening? And what is the system and the capacity within the system to put in those checks and balances to mitigate and reduce those risks? I hope this was helpful to you. You really want to consider these pitfalls and these opportunities when you're developing your use cases. So definitely reply in the comments. If you have any ideas or you have any questions, let us know. We're happy to help guide you.